Now, Fenton.
Wisdom.
My friend, how are you?
Mate, I'm doing exceptionally well. Brought the rain with me.
You did. Victoria. I was chatting with someone in Victoria today. The sun was out, and I'm sitting here on the Gold Coast, and
it's beautiful. I almost got a tan yesterday. Look at that. Unbelievable. Come up here. Every single time I've been in Queensland for the last 6 times it's rained. But,
right. Well, you are the rainmaker in more ways than one, and not just to do with the rain. But welcome, folks. Welcome to another Wealth, Wine and Wisdom live here in the studio. Great to have you, brother.
Mate, great to be up here.
In the flesh.
Good to get the real glasses out too.
Yes, Andy has selected the wine out of my wine fridge today and done a good job. Got out the fancy wine glasses, folks. So we're trying to do something fancy, but there's a few people on, I think I can see right now. So good to see a few guys. Hey, Melinda, good to see you. Aaron. And Facebook user, whoever you are, let us know in the chat. We can see you over here, or we've got a screen up. So good to see you guys on. Welcome to another Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, my friend.
Nice.
Plenty been going on in between drinks, and we'll get into that in a minute.
No, it's been unbelievable. It was almost like the news just dissipated.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden the last week it's just blowing up.
Yeah. Well, folks, let us know where you're coming in from. We've got Jeff popping by. Mate, always good to see you, Jeff. Lino, fantastic to have you here too. Thank you for joining us today. And Jared, hey, you're back. Hey, tell us what your selection is today, folks. Andy's got us a nice 2009. You tell everyone about it, Andy, because I'd probably just hack it up.
This is one of the ones that you grabbed from the Barossa Valley.
Yes.
9 Popes. I can't tell you that joke. I can't do it.
PG, mate. PG.
Maybe later on after the kids are asleep. But 9 Popes from Charles Melton. It's a beautiful drop. It's a Barossa. It's part of the Chairman's Club down there.
Yep.
And, mate, it's actually really, really good. Probably would have been better if you didn't freeze it. First, but a Shiraz slushy is as good as the next drink for the next person. But mate, that's a cracker drop. I'm very, very impressed.
Thank you. Well, hopefully as it airs or whatever, it gets better
as it warms back up.
It warms back up. But we've got a bunch on here. Someone in from Avoca Beach. How are you? Good to see you, David, Tom. There's a big yes for the Barossa. We've got Katrine here. Hubby's gone to get some wine. Well, that's good, Katrine, because you certainly need some wine when it comes to the Wealth, Wine and Wisdom afternoon chats, mate. But some of you may know already. If you're new, let us know if you're new in the chat. Fantastic to have you join us. Andy and I started the Wealth, Wine and Wisdom chats on a Friday, almost 3 years ago now. And many of you guys have been joining us on those Friday afternoons. It started because of COVID, folks, and we thought, well, we can't get out and see you physically.
Well, I could, but
I could go anywhere. You were in Victoria. We won't rub that in the Victorians' wounds. We'll eat the salt, but we couldn't get out and see you guys, so we decided to do a bit of a live. Really, to be honest, after being like totally exhausted at the end of a week, and Andy and I would sit around having a wine and chatting about shit. What do we do?
Yeah,
my world of real estate, your world of business and finance,
and the legislation was dropping, and really, and we haven't told this story for a while. But what ended up happening was we would get together just naturally at the end of the week and go, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, wow. And I'd say, Jace, what's your take on all the new legislation, of which there was, 20, 30, 40 pages of new stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just constantly coming. I'd say, what's your take? And you'd give me yours. I'd give you my take. Strategically, how do we utilize that as business owners, investors? And then we'd go into our individual communities and we would film videos. But by the time we filmed them, they were out of date. And
so many changes happening so fast.
And so we decided, well, to hell with it. We'll just have the conversation live. And that's really what this has all been about. And it's been about sharing information. I was actually chatting with somebody today about, he's going, what do you mean you don't monetize this thing? He's gone, do you advertise it? I said, no. and yeah, it's just not the purpose of it. It's really just, it started off to share information and help people navigate their way through what was incredibly challenging times. And now it's been more of, helping people make sense of what to listen to, or providing some context to what is really sensationalist stuff. Because I think one thing that COVID did was just put the mega lens on everything.
Yeah.
And it's like everything now has to be massive. Like, how do you beat COVID if you're the news? How do you beat it?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this created what I think now we've sort of coined as clickbait journalism.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
And also too, folks, let us know in the chat, how you managed throughout COVID. Did you sail through, or did was it a bit rough for you? Because many people had a rough time of it financially, and there were so many sort of hand grenades and landmines for people financially. And Andy and I wanted to try and make as much sense of it as possible for ourselves, our clients, and our community, and then share it with you guys really at the end of the day. So that's what these afternoons are about. That's what these Fridays are about. As the day wears on, as the wine gets consumed, I think there's less wisdom and there's more wine. But who knows? Who knows? But thank you for joining us, folks. Fantastic to have you guys here with us and sharing, this Friday afternoon. As it says on the bottom, there's a bit of a rough run sheet for the show. We usually sort of debrief what's been in the news in the last week. Try and make some sense of it. My world of real estate, your world of finance, financial planning, banking, and maybe talk about some things you should know, perspective, and answer some questions, folks. So if you've got any questions,
whack them in now, and we'll do our very best to get to them. We missed a few of them last week, so if there's carryover questions from last week, make sure that you slot them in there now if we haven't already answered them. Jason quite often answers a lot of them in the Wealth Coffee Chats in the morning as well.
Well, we've got some people talking about interest rate rises, and we'll talk about that, indirectly and directly over today as well. And like Andy said, stay tuned to some of the stuff that we both do after Fridays and during the week. We answer those sort of questions as well. But we've got Jeff. Jeff got himself, he's putting towards saving the Queensland budget. Jeff paid his $431 fine. Good work, Jeff. That's the way.
They're coming down up here. Must have been for 3Ks over the limits.
Big shout out to you, David and Tom, and a few of you guys who's coming in. Happy Friday from Simon in Newcastle. Simon, thanks for joining us, mate. Welcome along. Andy, what's going on in the news for you and your world? I know there's plenty going on, and you and I were just trying to collate what we would talk about today. There's a few big ones, though, and really, my world is actually slowing down a little, and I think your world's sort of speeding up a little bit. Your space is getting a bit more attention at the moment. So why don't you kick off the day? Shall I go and share your iPad?
Let's jump.
We'll dive into it, right?
As always, ladies and gents, got a little bit of a question, an anecdote. And what we thought is hold us to it if we forget, because there's a good chance. But we've got a question coming soon, and we're going to give away a little bit of a prize, potentially one of the 9 popes, not the people, the wine. One is more coveted probably than the other one. But the first question I have, this isn't the prize press question, but this is a bit of a warmer-upper, a bit of a teaser, and we'll maybe get to it a little bit later. But I'd love your feedback. What do politicians and magicians, what do they have in common?
Put it in the chat, folks. Andy loves these little jokes, and he's going to be a dad soon, so he's warming up with his dad jokes. It's good.
Well, I think that's the first public announcement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, hey, Mags. Father to be.
Really soon.
Real soon. Yeah, so looking forward to it. But this was we had a pop at the Fin Review last week. Because the Fin Review has been it's been publishing some opinion trash in our beliefs and clickbait. And since then, mate, it seems like they've done hockey as something that the Financial Review should have covered. The national men's hockey team is defending a 6 record Commonwealth Games gold medals. Mate, amazing. Nobody liked it. If you have a look down here. So I thought I'd better jump in. Hang on. And I'm the first.
Good work, Fenton.
So I was the first one to jump in there and like it. But it's good that they're getting back to their grassroots and talking about things that they know about.
Great to see.
This one I thought was very topical.
Just so everyone knows, folks, a little sort of go back to that article, Andy. The reason Andy liked this is a very high-level hockey player, played for Australia, Andy Fenton.
Once upon a
time. You can tell. A high-level competitor. Yeah, there you go. Anyway.
It's like it's dripping the wrong way at the moment. I'll give you a wiggle hard enough.
There you go. I think Katrine's answer was perfect. Both are fake. I love it. Good work, Katrine. And Jeff goes, both use illusions. Hey, that's not bad. And someone else said smoke and mirrors both use.
Ooh,
anyway, I like that.
It's getting pretty close. It's getting pretty close.
Yeah.
But this one I thought was an interesting one, and I've somehow managed to cut it off here. But Penfold's boss says that consumers are buying more expensive wines as it's less because they've got less money to spend, so they're spending on better quality.
Wow.
Now this goes to a conversation that you and I are having about setting up a wine fund, because one thing that we love as investors and what I'm learning about the property game is scarcity is a massive, almost nothing trumps scarcity.
It's the big one.
In investing in general. It's definitely true in my game.
Yeah.
Like a demanded IPO goes for sometimes light years beyond what it should.
Yeah.
And it very quickly comes back down to normal.
Yeah.
And an IPO is an initial public offering. So by saying that, I mean like when Tesla sort of launched, this isn't exactly the way that it happened, but just imagine Elon Musk's profile as he has now. If he launches a company, takes it public, he could build up so much momentum. But if there are only 100 stocks in that company, they'd go for ridiculous prices, right? So scarcity is an incredible driver of price, right? And so what we're seeing now in the wine industry is we're seeing that all wine, basically, as soon as it's made, there is no more of that wine made for that year.
Well, the great part about it is it's like, okay, it's the 1990, it's the 91, whatever. It's the 2009.
2009, 9 popes. Not just one of them, all 9 of them. All 9 of them in there, cleared of everything.
So what's the point then is this?
So inflation's actually pushing the price of wine up. So we were talking about the wine fund. The wine fund, the index is actually tracking extraordinarily well.
Is it pushing it beyond inflation?
But this is a quality discussion as well.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a flight to quality.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I'm assuming the same in real estate.
Happens all the time. I've got some good stories about this. Yeah.
But this is a great analogy of what happens in times like these. People don't exit markets. People exit poor quality. So people aren't buying the $2 bacon bits.
You hear that, folks? Actually, do you know what happens, Andy? A little one for real estate folks. Check this out. What happens in tough times? Tell me right now in the market, what happens when the tough market comes along with real estate and you're forced to sell? Which one can you sell in a shit market? Which one can you sell for the right price? A good quality piece of real estate or a rubbish quality piece of real estate? Tell me that in the chat. Because now you say this, in real estate, if you need to liquidate when the markets are a bit slow, the only one that you can actually sell without either a loss or taking a dusting or for the right price, boom, Chris is on it. Quality ones, folks. That is the flip side of this game, because if you end up being forced to sell in a poor market, you have to sell your quality real estate. You can't liquidate your shit real estate.
My head went the opposite way. I'm going to get rid of the shit stuff because I want to keep the good stuff because I know that that'll maintain its value. But you're saying that that's because it's the only one that's maintaining its value. That's the one, if you're forced to sell, you have to sell the good stuff.
Well, if you want to get cash out, right? Yeah. If you want to liquidate, you want to cash up.
Because otherwise you're going to get pants.
Yeah. Or, your equity was 100 grand 5 minutes ago and now it's only 20 grand and so on, because those markets change, as all markets do. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Good conversation.
Right. And prudent.
Yeah.
For today.
Yeah. And well, there you go. Well, it's interesting, what our preference would be, and maybe I didn't ask the question properly because there was a couple of mixed answers, is you would prefer to get rid of the rubbish one and keep the better one.
And every day of the week.
Yeah, that's what you'd prefer. I've been in this position where I've been squeezed. My equity or my value or the selling volume of those types of real estate, maybe the B class one or even the C class one, happened to me. I bought lots of cash flow real estate. And when the market turned on cash flow, my capital value turned as fast.
Yeah.
So I couldn't liquidate the capital out of it. So I had to sell my good properties that had equity, but they were low cash flow. So anyway, I derailed your conversation, but I thought there was a...
It's interesting because in equity markets, it almost happens the same way, but reverse.
Yeah, right.
Because the growth stocks, like the tech stocks, which are getting smashed to smithereens right now, apart from Tesla, coincidentally enough, they don't have great cash flow. So in times like this, you go to higher quality, which is high cash flow.
Yeah.
Ongoing income streams, higher guarantee
That's
of income.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same, but for the opposite reason.
Oh, mate, that's how we can be complementary.
No, we can. No, there's more than one way to skin a cat. My question is, why could you skin a cat?
I always wonder where those things come from. Hey, did you know? This is an interesting one. Folks, does anyone know where Dutch courage comes from? Dutch courage comes from. Put this in the chat. Listen, where do sayings come from? And anyway, we're getting a bit distracted today. Anyway, this is something you should know.
When we get together, format goes out the window.
This is a thing you should know. Andy, where did Dutch courage from? How did? Now I haven't double checked this data allegedly. Oh, it comes from Holland, right? It comes from the Dutch. Good work, Bob. Actually, that was.
I love that because we did that earlier. Jason said, "So, where do you think the most amount of?" Or am I going to steal something from later on?
I don't know, but let's leave it, right?
All right, okay, I'm probably going to steal something.
The saying. All right, Bob was on it. It came from Holland, but the saying "Dutch courage" comes from. Where does Dutch courage come from? The saying.
If I had to pontificate, I'd go that there was potentially a large conflict in Holland at some point in time, and they drank a lot in order to be able to have small masses take on big masses.
He's a smart fellow with deduction. So supposedly, as the story goes, the Dutch used to brew or distill 90 proof
moonshine,
like
still do
gin.
Yeah, moonshine.
Yeah. So what they would do?
Thing in Scandinavia. Yeah. Remember we were talking about it last week. The alcohol tax is up here, so they brewed their own.
Yeah. So they 90 proof, and so every soldier was given a bottle of 90 proof before they would go into battle. They'd have a swig of Dutch courage. They would go into some alcohol stupor.
They weren't great shots.
No. There you go. Anyway, we're not talking about alcohol. We're talking about.
And we're going somewhere with this. We are leading in. This is actually probably more structured than many of them. But this is more over in your neck of the woods, mate.
Yeah.
But Martin Place is tying itself up in it's a bit half and half because it's a lot to do with the real estate world. But Martin Place is tying itself up in intellectual knots. I think that's kind of ironic sometimes, really. But,
would that be an oxymoron? Would that be an oxymoron?
No, I love Mr. Lowe. He's wonderful. 25 likes. Rationalising rate hikes based on rubbery forecasts. What have you and I been waxing lyrical on for a long time? Transitory inflation versus real inflation versus should this be going up? And this we've got this peppered throughout a theme for today about the Reserve Bank, but ultimately we're all experiencing it, right? Rate hikes.
Yep.
They had the wonderful headline today: double rate hikes. What the hell is a double rate hike? Like there is no standard rate hike. It's not like a rate hike is 15 basis points. Right? They can raise it by 5 basis points, which is 0.05%. They can raise it by 10. But the articles that you're reading, double rate hikes. It's unbelievable. But this is a real thing that's happening at the moment. And Jim Chambers has actually moved pretty. Oh, well, hang on. Sorry, that's a bit out. Oh, hang on. I'm not sure whether that's Jim Chambers or not. I think there's a striking resemblance. I've got to get off him.
It's stuck there, Fenton. There we go. Right, there he is.
Chambers. So this is I'm pretty sure his head might have ended up Mr. Lowe there by the looks of it. He's like, hang on, Jim.
He's a bit shocked.
This isn't what we agreed on when we met last time. So for those of you who don't know, this is the chair of the Reserve Bank of Australia, and so this is one of my big themes that we'll talk about, perhaps in things that you should know. But ultimately, there's this big focus, right, on the Reserve Bank of Australia. right about now. When I said, what, I said, what's the difference between magicians and politicians? Well, some of the things that they have in common is they both use sleight of hand. Look over here while they diddle you over here, intentionally used, right? And in my view, Jim calling, and I'm not sure whether it was Jim. I was trying to find who actually was the leader of this review into the Reserve Bank. But ultimately, for those of you who don't know, the Reserve Bank sets the cash rate. And we've talked about this in the last couple of weeks. The only rate really that's set by a person. Or by a group is the cash rate. And that happens all around the Western world. Right? Now, they have a mandate. And a mandate basically says that that's set by the politicians and by review boards. There's multiple sequences to it. I won't just put the pollies in there. But ultimately, that mandate is set, and then they have to operate within their mandate, and they're not allowed out of it. It's not like if you go 65 in a 60 zone, you get a fine. No, it's like you
unlike
do not. Unlike Jeff, who went 61 in a Queensland 60 zone and got a $500 fine. Thank you very much. That's Labor policy coming in now, but ultimately they're given a mandate, right? So the Reserve Bank at the moment in Australia has one of the most flexible mandates in the world.
Well, it's an interesting question because Bob asked, do they just copy the Fed?
You're very cynical, Bob, and probably right. They're a reasonably large part, sort of leading indicator, and I guess it's permission, isn't it? If John's doing it,
they have been the largest economic force, around for a long time. That could be coming to an end in the next decade or so.
Well, we're collecting dots or joining them, Jason. So our mandate is more flexible, right?
Yeah.
So 2 to 3% inflation, that's a target.
Yeah.
Right. There's also an employment target and general welfare of the Australian population. So the mandate is actually a lot broader.
Very different to other countries. It's like, okay, keep inflation under control. That's it. That's all your job is.
100%.
Yeah.
So now this inquiry or this review, and put it into the chat if you know of any royal inquiry or review that the government has put into anything, whether it be aged care, banking, that's made the world a better place.
Yeah.
Put that into the chat.
Yeah.
Or if you can't think of one, just put did not, and then put all the ones that you know about, like all the ones that I just mentioned. So this is where I go to the sleight of hand thing, and we were having a bit of a chat off camera before.
Yeah.
The politicians are going, well, we're going to raise taxes.
They're going to raise taxes. They're going to be, like in my world, it's in the worst property supplied market I've ever seen in 22 years. It's a disaster. The first home buyers, no chance other than the bank of mum and dad. We'll talk about that later.
Oh, you'll get an extra subsidy just to push up the price.
Yeah, yeah. Let's give away free money and see what that does. Far out.
Makes you look like Jim there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Low, sorry.
Well, and if you get in early, well, hey, happy days. But the late person comes in now 2 years later when everyone got between $50,000 and $80,000 of free benefits from the government. What's that done? All that's done is just pushed up prices.
Which is kudos to you, because I remember when we were running the first ones of these Wine and Wisdoms at the beginning of COVID, and one of the things that we agreed on, said, Jason, because I'm licensed, just to make sure we don't say anything that gets me into trouble. And Jason says, all right. Well, so here's my prediction on property, guys. I'm like, what? And Jason just he's doubled down straight away. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to jail. And because you're like, all of these new measures, there's a property shortage. And I'm like, but dude, we're in a pandemic. Like, shit is going. It's like, nah, it's going up. It's going up. It's going up.
People got to live somewhere. Yeah.
Well, and I guess there's some insights into some basic fundamentals around that. But what has property done in that meantime? And some of that was the stimulus measures.
Well, it really lit the fire, right? It lit the fire. Yeah.
And you called it, because as soon as that happened, all of a sudden, almost in a month, things went up 10%.
Yeah. Totally. And supply in and of itself doesn't cause those problems. But we had supply, we had low interest rates.
Free checks.
Yeah, free money. We had low supply, free money, a large build-up of people who hadn't entered the market that were wanting to.
Scared of missing out.
Yeah, cheapest money we'd ever seen in our entire lives. Like all these things lined up, and it's like, crikey, yep, boom, let's go. Yep.
So does that have anything to do with the Reserve Bank?
Well, someone who might be a little bit cynical might say that it might be, hey, they don't want to face the music of their mismanagement. I personally believe that stimulus was the spark that led to the problem we have now in our real estate space. No supply, poor market, property prices extremely high because of that temporary free money giveaway, stimulation, all sorts of things. So they don't want to face the music, Andy. That's what I'm like. They're like, hey, hot potato, you know what we should do? We should investigate the RBA or put something over there, because people are going to have some challenges that we don't want to be accountable for, which they should be.
Whose fault was it?
Let's distract it. Like, RBA, it's your fault. It's your fault.
It's even got a good ring to it, doesn't it? Whose fault was it? It was the RBA's
RBA's,
fault.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that nobody will know what the fuck that means.
Yeah. No. Well, that's it. Hey, what are you doing about interest rates? Politician. We've got the RBA thing. The inquiry's going on. Yeah. You watch it, folks. It'll be a piss take. And like what Bob said, another friggin' taxpayer waste of money doing Royal Commissions. What came from the Royal Commission, the APRA Royal Commission? 2/5 and nothing. Matter of fact, what it did is it actually reduced and took really important people out of the world, your and my world. Yeah. The financial planning industry right now has the least amount of financial planners ever.
I think it's almost half.
Halved financial planners for the Australian population. Less people today have a financial planner than they did 5 years ago. What a fucking disaster!
There's more laws.
Yeah, and there's more laws. How's this shit? Like, get this, folks. I get fired up. Fuck with this stuff. Yeah, excuse the French. Now, less financial planners, less Australians getting financial advice, costs fucking more, and now the financial planners are on the hook for nothing, right? They absolutely poleaxed the industry. It was actually a budding industry, and it could have turned into something amazing, and they, effed it. And over in my space, finance brokers got treated the same. The banks bloody made all were the allegedly the
allegedly,
ones. Well,
possibly.
They only got fined $400 million for allegedly doing something. But anyway,
that's one bonus check.
That was one bonus check. Yeah.
But the investors paid for that.
Yeah, exactly. And then brokers who represent an individual really well by saying, hey, which is the best loan out of 113 loans on the market, 113 lenders, the ones ended up being targeted to take their income away. It's like, what? How did that happen? Anyway.
So basically what Jace is saying is that they were trying to remove commissions from brokers, because that's how mortgage brokers get paid.
Remunerated.
And so the reason why you go to a mortgage broker is the mortgage broker can look at everyone, or depending on their license or their aggregator, but many of them can look at most of the industry.
At least 30 to 40%.
Compare 20, 30 different places where you can get your loan and go, that's going to suit you the best and that's going to give you the best rate. So they wanted to try, and they were close to getting it done. Mate. Very, very close.
Yeah.
Which would have meant that all mortgage brokers would cease to exist. And then what happens?
Banks are back in town, mate. Banks make more money.
If you want a loan, you have to go in through the front door and boom through the banks.
Yeah. So, mate, I tell you what, I think it's an absolute smoke and mirrors job right now, personally. I think that's waste of bloody taxpayers' money. That is it.
Oh, totally. Yep. How to throw another pea in the soup and never taste it.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are not familiar, which many people aren't, because these are kind of economic terms, but I think it's important to know this right now, because you're going to see a lot of this. At the moment, they're showing me the right hand, left hand, so I'm looking at the right. Now, monetary policy, that is the Reserve Bank setting the cash rate to control how quickly the economy grows or how quickly it slows. Raise interest rates, it slows the economy, less money in people's pockets. Lower interest rates, can't really do much there.
And why would they want to slow that money, Andy? Because they want to control inflation, folks, right? That's the idea.
That's their measure.
Yeah, that's their
right?
measure. Yep.
That's their key measure, but they do have a little bit more broader mandate. So then fiscal policy is fiscal. It's just a funny word. But fiscal policy.
Moving on, Andy. Moving on.
Fiscal policy is essentially how the government spends its budget, right, in order to create long-term growth for the industry. So it's like the CFO or the CEO of an organisation.
We're building a train line or something. Fiscal policy,
and that creates jobs,
billions into schools,
creates taxes.
Yep.
So that's kind of running a business, right? So what?
Well, it's the business of running the country, right?
It's the business of running the country.
What's our infrastructure? What are our assets? Let's build them.
Let's get the balance sheet under wraps.
Yeah, right.
So here's the rub, right? So what's happening now is that this is the politicians, right? That's sitting over fiscal policy, and this is the business of Australia, biz of Australia. The budgets of Australia and the politicians, that's their court. That's what they're in charge of. And one would say, mate, that is the biggest influence of how the country goes.
100%. Yeah.
In my business and in your business, it doesn't matter what interest rates do. Our business has to survive regardless, right?
Yep.
No, so this part, while important, this part is the most important.
Yeah.
So let's just have a look at a track record. Let me just jump into here.
You do that. We've got someone who's keen. Andy, check this out. Whoever you are, hello. You're showing up as Facebook user. You must be one of the groups, but they're looking forward to meeting you this week, Andy.
Can't wait to catch up.
Good to see. What are we looking at here, Andy?
Yeah. So this is one of my favourites. This is the debt clock.
Is this Australia's debt?
This is Australia's debt.
Oh, shiver me timbers.
Look at this. If Jason and I ran businesses, if any of you out there ran businesses like this, you wouldn't exist. You'd probably either be shot or you'd be in jail or you'd be digging yourself out of a very, very big hole. You can't run a company like this. But what we're going to do here is let me find the top line. Here we go. Let me see if I can get the math right on this. 8,519,000,000,043 million. 44 million. So let's say what we're going to do.
$1 million a minute.
We're going to take a snapshot of this right now. And so by the end, and what I want you to do is I want you to put in the chat now, by the end of this session, which is roughly around about half an hour away, what do you reckon that debt clock is going to show? Right?
Show us that. Yeah.
What do you think that's actually going to read? Whack it in the chat. And we're really, really interested. The closest person, we'll try and get your details, and you might have to remind us, and we'll send you out one of the 9 popes or even one of the bottles. But my point being here, Jace, is have a look at this. And I'm not talking Liberal or Labor. We're agnostic, really, because they're so close to each other. They're all, in the same boat. But ultimately, look, this is our government debt. This is our national debt. This is our state and local government debt. The state and local governments are really actually doing some of the best jobs.
Well, I was going to say, is Brandon here? Yeah. Hello, Brandon. Good to see you, Brandon.
Brandon's back. It's been a little while.
Good to see you, mate.
Creepers. I hope you've got some Kleenex.
Well, we got Chris chucking something in there, but a quick pop question. I think I asked this once before. There's only one state in Australia that doesn't actually have a state there. Which one is it, folks? Put that in the chat. There's a state in Australia, one of Australia's states.
Territory, isn't it?
No, it's not. Oh, Andy, they're trying to trick you. No, it's not a territory. So now you've only got 5 to choose from. He knows how to roll this. But put that in the chat. Bobbery knows this. I think I cast this the other day. It's Western Australia. They're actually in a surplus.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
They've still got debt. They've still got debt, but they're in a surplus budget.
Surplus budget, yeah.
That's my little got out of there, Bob.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? I do know that WA is trying to, what's it called? Secede from Australia once or twice before.
I reckon they'll end up digging a moat
digging a trench. Well, we've got everyone's on Western Australia here, so a lot of debt going on, right? The question is like, how the hell do you get out of that? Well, that's probably something for another wine and wisdom another time, Andy. But is it something for us to be terrified about, or is it just what it is? Is it just endemic in every single country in the world, and it's how it rolls right now?
Well, in isolation, it's bad.
Right. Yep.
If we were the only country in the world that was raising debt levels in this kind of magnitude, it would be horrific. It would be Brazil 20 years ago. It would be Thailand 40 years ago. And they just went through spiraling inflation, massive deflation. But the reality is that it's the whole globe, the whole Western world, including Asian, China. And when I say Asian, China, I mean Asia is doing it as well. The Western world, sort of known as Europe, UK, so on and so forth. But so that the Western society is doing it, the Asian population is doing it as well. So there is everyone's drunk on debt, and I've got lots of theories about it. I almost did a thesis about it when I was going to become an economist. So I could always have a job and never be right.
You dodged a bullet there, brother. Maybe you should have stuck with that one.
Freaking easy would that be? Just rock up and be wrong and just constantly employed. What a train.
Yeah.
But one of my theories, it was the thesis that I was writing, was the velocity of money and the velocity of debt.
Yeah.
One of the theories within that is that it's quite possible with population growth and economic growth that people actually are born with debt. So you're actually born with a negative ledger, and part of it, but it's all relative though, right? And what I mean by that is it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to pay back your negative ledger. It just means that that's zero.
Yeah, that's your zero line. That's your zero line.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and you and I talk about it in business all the time. You got to move your zero line. You got to take the cash out of the business. Only be working with what you've got, right? Not what's saved up in war chests. And sometimes you go into business and you run from a debt balance sheet, and you need to run from that, and you've got to be aware of it. But sometimes companies will run for a long time with hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of debt, and still do what they need to do.
Yeah, but there's many companies on the planet though too in significant amounts of cash, right?
Massive.
So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like and it's time to reset the ledger. Yes, Susanna, might be interesting to press the button and do a big reset one day. But I do wonder, right? So it's kind of like
that's a possibility.
Yeah. Some of our
dip into one of the popes.
Yeah. Some of our easy.
Sorry.
Some of our favourite businesses we love to talk about: Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Microsoft. You call them the too big to fails.
Way too big to fail.
And I love that. Sitting on more cash than you could possibly imagine. So it's not necessarily everywhere and everyone is in terrible debt. Like the cash and the spreads just kind of like piled up in certain places, right? So
that'll take a long time to redistribute. 100%.
Yeah, Google as well, Bob. Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
And they use that for huge acquisitions, and the result of that is that they end up with more cash.
Well, that's an interesting thing. You and I talk about this all the time, collecting dots and connecting dots. And, there's actually a really good TED talk about that. They
stole our idea, didn't they?
Well, it's an interesting one. I'll send it to you.
Unbelievable. We've got to stop. We're going to start governing who's watching.
12% of the companies of the world control 83% of the wealth of the world, right?
I know where we're going here.
So
the Rothschilds are at it again, Jason.
And it's actually not the Rothschilds. But what it is, it's this conversation of capitalism has an organizing principle. If you're profitable, you end up with lots of money. Money sitting in a bank account. Tell me, folks, cash is, finish that sentence, cash is, or money in a bank account is, cash is
You know what? There could be a good cross section of you and me in this. It'll be really interesting to have a look because they're not going to line up.
They might not line up, right?
Different reasons,
different versions of the world. Cash is trash, right?
Cash is trash.
Yeah. So we talk about this for ages. It's like cash is trash. Certainly, when interest rates are higher, you put your money in your offset account. It's much better in your offset account than in a savings account, right? So if you're a business and you've got $100 billion profit sitting there in cash, cash is king. I like that, Nat.
There's one of mine.
Yeah. There's one of Andy's.
I'll contextualise that later because we're in total agreement. There's different
versions. So what do they do with their money? Well, they look to put it to work over and above a certain amount of liquidity or safety or whatever version of the world you want to have when you talk about business or your own budget or whatever. Shit, that money's not really doing much. Could it be deployed better somewhere else? Yes, it could. All right, I'm going to buy businesses that I think would integrate into this business, vertical, horizontal integration, or I want to de-risk. I want to de-risk supply chains or whatever it is. So
Amazon into healthcare.
Yeah, and why are they doing that? Because it connects the dots for supply chains or customers or whatever it might be. So people like to think it's an evil plan. Aha, Dr. Evil. It's actually just what happens when you've got resources, you've got to deploy them, and you go look for assets. So you buy things, and you buy other businesses. You buy things with money. That's what you do.
And you would think that governments would win the game because they control the rules. Hey, it's like being the bank.
Yeah.
It's like when you're playing Monopoly at home and you're going to cheat, right? Because you're the bank. And then
Andy, did you cheat in Monopoly?
I might have.
I might have too. I used to be the banker with my brother and sister, and to this day, my brother and sister never knew how did he win all the time.
Start with a few extra dollars and mortgage everything to the hill.
Yeah.
So they're the bank, so they should always win. In theory, they should always win because they can change the rules to suit themselves.
Yeah.
They control, to a degree, the fiscal policy and how that's distributed around the economy. So you'd think that they would win. So linking all of this back to the comment about the Reserve Bank, look over here while we do this, is that ultimately we've got people who have proven themselves for multiple generations not to be able to do a sound job of running the business of the country, now starting to go, well, hang on, one of the most minor reasons why this country is struggling in various different sectors at the moment, one of the more minor reasons, well, let's go and have a look at you because it must be your fault. It's got to be your fault.
Yeah.
Because it can't be ours because we're doing shit absolutely perfectly over here.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I agree. I think it's just going to be a big farce. And so while this is happening, I think everyone out there should be doubling down and watching the fiscal policy. And by fiscal policy, I mean, what are they doing with taxes? What are they doing with the roads?
Yeah.
What are they doing with business? This is now the greatest chance, and you watch, I'll bet my bottom dollar to it, that this is going to be where they're going to focus a lot of attention over here and they're going to double down on their nasties. And you wait, mate. It's going to be coming. They've already started in Queensland with property taxes.
You and I talked about that last week. We had a couple of questions about the land tax out of Queensland. You know, the Queensland government wanting to bundle properties you own in other states into your land tax calculation. Cheeky buggers. Bob's already saying that Queensland's putting up its mining taxes, or attempting to anyway. It's interesting. And I suppose sometimes it's like if you can't beat them, join them. Hedge your risk in either what bank stocks. Tell me this. This would be a good question. Interesting. On the fly, which industries or businesses always benefit from the government's changing rules around taxes? I don't know if there's one that always does. But usually the banks are usually fairly well off, medium to long term, aren't they?
I guess it depends on who's on the
who's pulling the chain, who's pulling the strings. Yeah.
Well, it goes back to Kerry Packer's comments in the 91 House of Reps, and it goes back to one of the other slides that I had, which I won't bring back up. But our new treasurer is now raising taxes on foreign investment. It's a no. But here's the thing. So we need foreign investment in the country. Arguably, we need more foreign investment.
We need more money. Like we need new businesses. We need money in this country. We need just because
and competition.
Yeah,
competition. Competition is great. Not great necessarily for businesses, but that's where evolution comes from.
Well, I've said this a few times with competition, right? In my world, real estate. I say to people say, "Oh, real estate can get cheaper." Well, do you know what? In Australia,
it can or it can't.
No, well, it can or whatever. So,
it's an interesting comment.
In my world, it's it won't in Australia. There are many other places in the world.
Cheaper compared to what?
Well, it's the compared to what question, right? But I say to people, all right, name a country. Name a country. You just name a big country in the world.
A big one?
Yep.
I was going to say Italy. Is that big enough?
That's
UK.
Bigger.
We'll go UK.
Go to the UK, right? On the doorstep, literally one boat ride away, you have very low labour forces, right? Australia.
Perfect example.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So Australia does not have, and the Kiwis or the Tasmanians are not on the doorstep. The cheap labour force, I can tell you that.
I'm not quite sure how many countries we're about to insult here, but let's have a pop at them all.
No, but many countries around the world have cheap labour forces attached to them for labouring work.
Yep.
Right. In Australia, that's not the case. You can go to America. I was chatting with some friends online today in America, and they're like, "Oh, we can't get anyone to clean our house." I'm like, "How much do you pay them?" It's like $4 an hour. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" A cleaner in Australia is like $70 an hour, and they're like, "What?" So it's an interesting conversation, and it's not a derogative one or an offensive one.
No, well, this is how Brexit arguably got across the line, right? Because Brexit was a lot of people jumping up. Maybe we should switch to the rosé.
We're going on to the rosé, folks.
Two types of wine here tonight. Yeah. Both from Barossa. This one's served cold, not slushy. But so got very close to the Polish heritage, and so there was in the UK there was a lot of Poles who would come over and work cheaper as doctors, dentists, plumbers,
arbitrage.
Builders.
Make more money from where they lived.
Make a lot more money, better quality of lifestyle, willing to work harder, longer, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's efficient, right? Because it's certainly in my industry, in the financial advising industry, I have a firm belief that what happened is our industry got fat, lazy, and greedy. They stopped thinking of how to innovate. They just had it too good for too long. And
that's true. Yeah.
But going in and legislating is not the way of solving the problem. Creating healthy competition, that's an incredible way of being able to change things.
It's so much healthier for a free market to find momentum because as consumers, we want good things. We want to be treated well for the right price and so on. And when you legislate and it stops that, it bloody ruins provision of stuff.
And like Uncle Kerry says, we can't work here, so why will we bother?
Yeah.
And offshore investment moves away.
Yeah.
Or finds ways of being able to work here without paying here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is the problem. And so while they're showing you the RBA, look everywhere else. Great investment decisions, and I know that we've spent a long time sort of bouncing around this, but I reckon this is a massive, massive, massive theme for the next 12 months. Look at what the government are doing, not what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's almost the reverse of Gary Vee, or the same of Gary Vee, Look at what I'm doing, not what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if mine's doing that. Well, let me see if I can reconnect mine, Andy. But, it was my little conversation today was going to be sort of tying into what we were talking about a moment ago, which was some of the jobs, employment, people, whatever it might be, skilled labour. I can see if I can make mine work here. Are we working? Oh yeah, it's back on. Let's see how we go, folks.
We're back.
Yeah.
We're not used to doing this together.
Well, it's the tech's a little bit different, isn't it? So here we go. lowest unemployment in 48 years, Andy. You know, we've got
48 years.
48 years.
48 years.
There you go. That's a long time. No, one more year, actually. Almost as old as me. So,
I was about to say you started the trend.
Right at the pointy end of this. But the point is, I think I shared this not so long ago, about the idea of, let's see how we go here. Yeah. Let's see if we can get some skilled labour into the country.
Yes.
Australia's population policy has been for a long time, people from overseas. We haven't been reproducing at the rate we should, Andy.
But also it's about, look how well we've done. Unemployment's the lowest it's ever been.
Yeah.
Well, because you don't have anybody coming across the border.
There's nobody coming. And to be honest, it's only filling the demand of the existing business. Where's the future? Where's the innovation? Where's the new business?
It's strangling. It actually strangles.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening is if you're in a growth business, you need more people, generally, right? And you need more people within that specific field of which you're in.
And you would invest money. You would invest money. You wouldn't sit on it.
Education of those people. More money flowing around the system.
Yep.
More taxes that get paid by the employer for the people. But limiting that intake of people in order to satisfy allegedly satisfy a low unemployment rate, stupid, right? Celebrating low unemployment, like anything to its extreme is unhealthy. And low unemployment is extraordinarily unhealthy because all of a sudden then businesses go, well, if we can't find people in Australia, we have to find another way of doing it somewhere else.
Pushes money offshore.
Out of Australia.
That's what happens. But also, too, what happens is now on the pendulum swings the other way is, let's say, the quality and, let's say, quantity of people you need. You end up having to pay more for potentially less. And to make that business work, you have to pass on those expenses, and that fuels inflation and other things as well. So it's kind of this and university is expensive. And it's an interesting one. Alison brings up a few points. I was going to sort of say there's been some studies around the world. Australia is one of the worst places in the world for wealth being locked up in real estate. And one of the major
because of our taxes, Jason.
Yes, well, maybe it could be, Andy. So the longer you own a piece of real estate, the less the less reason you have to sell it. The less debt, the more capital value it goes up. You're going, I'm not selling this bloody thing ever in my entire life because of the capital gains tax I would pay.
So can I tell you an interesting story?
Yeah.
30 seconds. Not a client of mine, but I know of multiple people who own dwellings of over $10 million in value each who get the age pension.
Yeah.
They can't sell because it's hit a capital gains tax event at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Which means that it's now within the capital, because normally principal place of residence you can sell without it.
Yes.
But they've hit, or they've been in trusts, and so they can't sell the asset because you sell that $10 million asset, you got $4 or $5 million worth of capital gains tax to pay on it.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is it sits. It stores the wealth. It doesn't move.
Well, it decays wealth, Andy, because both you and I know, like, things that stop, water, our minds, our bodies, money, when it stops moving and the trickle slows down,
it deteriorates.
And devalues, right?
Grows mold.
So, yep. So for many of us, we want to buy some properties to create a passive income. We talk about that all the time. Highest and best use, accelerate that real estate, unlock the equity, move it forward, whatever it might be. When it becomes 10, 12, 15, $20 million assets, when the return on it is nothing. If you could unlock that, if someone could unlock it without the tax, they would unlock it and put it into other.
Irresponsible, Jason.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, Andy. But there you go.
We'll have to legislate to stop people from being able to do that, because that could be irresponsible.
Yes. Well, what was irresponsible the other day is I went and made some gin. Anyway, that's where I found out where Dutch Courage came from, folks. Anyway.
I did wonder what yours was.
Gin Serene.
Gin Serene.
Gin Serene, glycerine, gin.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, somebody thought my Shays one was Adventure Urine, but so there you go. But interesting. I might chuck a few of the real estate things out there, folks. What we're seeing is the first conversations around the slowing down of the construction challenges, Andy.
Oh, isn't that funny? Because the government are only actually just starting to address the beginning parts of
they only start to notice. What is happening is the massive amount of construction boom is moving through the pipeline. It's not making construction any cheaper. It's not happening any faster. But what's happening for the first time in a while is new starts, construction starts are now going down rather than up. And the tradies, early warning signs or early messages for my world, the construction world, the real estate world, where you're laying a concrete slab for a single property. Yep. That the concreters have got a little bit more work capacity than they did 6 months ago, because they're the first thing they've kind of moved through, and now they're coming back again. So what we're going to see is a little bit, maybe another 6 more months of kind of, depending on where you are with construction. Single construction is different to multi-density construction, by the way, folks.
What's the difference? Because there's single construction, there's multi-density, then there's
it's kind of it's above 3 stories and below 3 stories. There is kind of a medium between 3 and 8 stories, but call it a house or a townhouse. Kind of, they can be between 1 and 3 stories high, and so different licensing, different supply chains, different materials often. And
so what's the co-relationship between the two then? So we're saying that the single dwelling is slowing down, or
the single dwelling is slowing down because they turn over faster.
Right.
Like you often you can build a single dwelling in like 12 weeks to 40 weeks.
Put it in the chat if you've seen something done in 40 weeks.
Well, not of recent times, but 16 weeks, 12 weeks. We've had houses built in Queensland. But the point is that big, you can see it here, folks, right there. I can draw that. That big chunk there now is moving through the pipeline, and you'll start to see in the next 6 months that unlock a little bit.
And this is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not necessarily a great thing for the concreters, because they can't keep charging more and more and more.
Well, their prices have gone up.
Yeah, but this is an equalising force.
Yeah.
There's positive and negative in all of these things. It's like efficient markets.
Yeah.
Right. It can't always be subsidised. It can't always be scarce, because otherwise it gets out of control.
The cost of building a new house, freestanding house, has gone up about $80,000 over 2 years.
$80,000. What's the average price of a house?
You're probably looking at $380,000 now.
$380,000 for average build
of a regular everyday house, maybe the medium quality, certainly not a high quality.
God, that's almost 30%.
Yeah, it's a good chunk. Yeah. It used to be sort of 240 to early 300s. Kind of, you could get something medium quality depending on the size you built. 180 to 200 square meters, 220.
Yep.
So now you're sort of your top end of 300. So
yeah, right.
Yeah. So you're looking at a decent chunk. But again, it depends on what you're building and where you're building it and how flat the land is, and there's quite a lot of variables in that sort of stuff. On the average, yeah, it'll be under 400, between 350 and 400 for a regular kind of 200 square meter house.
Yep.
In most places in Australia, maybe a bit cheaper in Victoria, maybe a bit more expensive in Queensland at the moment.
Cheaper in Victoria.
Yeah, it's interesting. A little bit cheaper in Victoria. A bit cheap. Well, I mean, I think the supply down there has been less constrained, and just a bigger population base for tradies and stuff like that. Mm. Where in Queensland, the same amount of sales, but to deliver, we had a 50,000 interstate population migration as well. So, that really affected real estate.
Well, they raised the taxes, so they're looking at pushing them back across the border, right?
Well, they're far out. That's anyway.
You can come to Queensland, but you can't own that property in Victoria.
Well,
you get your ass back down there, or we'll tax you for it.
You need to get rid of it. Along the way. So, in our world, in my world, plenty going on. There was a question. I thought we might try and answer some questions before we sign off tonight, Andy.
Yeah, let's shoot.
I did have a question here. Aaron had a question. What are your thoughts on the Perth property market within the 10K?
This is interesting.
Yeah, Aaron. I think Perth's an actual, we're back in the Perth market again for the first time in 9 years. It's second highest incomes in Australia. It's the highest rental yield of a capital city in Australia at the moment.
Not allowed out?
Well, and I think, the lockdown, Andy, disadvantaged Perth, or the lockout, not lockdown. You couldn't go into the state at all. No one could go in, no one could leave.
Labour prices went up through the roof.
Yeah. So, it got a bit isolated. The east coast of Australia got all the attention. It really was. It ran from south to north. Victoria, hey, we're out of here. New South Wales sort of flowed up to Queensland.
Thank you for being subtle.
Well, and interestingly, actually more people left New South Wales and moved to Queensland than they did from Victoria. Most Victorians just moved to regional Victoria. They didn't leave the state, funnily enough.
Well, we don't want to have to deal with
that. Well,
because then we have to go, origin, you don't know the difference. You feel like a moron when you go to a pub.
So, that's actually an interesting one, I thought. So, but if you think about it, come in. We've got a guest here. Yeah, there we go, Josh. So, the Western Australian marketplace, I quite like the Western Australian marketplace. It's always been a really good place. It's
volatile.
It can be attached to the mining market and can go up and down with the mining market. So
but there's something to be said about that, though. Is potentially don't. Well, my take on it would be I love consistently volatile things.
Yeah.
Where not short-term volatility, but long-term seasonal trends where it goes quite negative for a period of time. But you can see when things start to change. So you can take a bit of an educated bet on it.
Well, I think, you talked about it earlier tonight, which was the idea of quality, flight to quality. Any market, any real estate market anywhere, if you're going to buy something quality, and I'm going to circle around to Aaron right now and say, Aaron, where's the quality in this piece of real estate, right? So, it sounds inexpensive, Aaron, but a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom duplex, I would say, Aaron, that would be in the bottom end of the quality end of town, Aaron. So, is that what you're going to afford, Aaron, or is that what you just found? So, I would say, depending, 10K from the CBD, good, sounds like it's good distance, et cetera, et cetera. But what's the quality of real estate, Aaron, in that price point?
Because we had a lot of players that operated in the investment market of residential real estate in WA. My businesses and what I was affiliated, we didn't touch it, but it was going berserk. It was like 38% per annum.
When was this? Back in the day?
Back in the day.
Early 2000s,
yeah. Yeah, back in the days of the Cowboys. And I remember going over there and looking at it, and I was just eyeballing it. And so they started putting up, so I think it's about 15 minutes out of Perth on the west side of the main highway. And all of a sudden it goes from more open blocks to literally places where the gutters almost overlap onto each other. And so that just got built out. And there was a huge amount of property sold in those areas. And they were sold for the same prices of stuff that was sort of a little bit inland from Scarborough, a little bit further back from the beach, but a shittier house, but not a brand new house.
Bit better location, though.
10 times better location. Less volume of it available. You wouldn't get the brand new sort of feels of the house. But the difference between the two of those bits of real estate now over this period of time is I knew people who bought both, around about 500,000 for each. One is now worth about 2.5, and the other one is actually worth 380. So $120,000 difference. So that quality versus, and I didn't understand it at the time. I was kind of looking at it, like, I don't get this. I actually don't get this.
And often you've got to be careful of the quality of the property is not necessarily the quality that we're talking about, right? The quality of the location, flight to quality, walk score, amenities, beach, whatever it might be, you know.
Schools.
So, schools, those sorts of things. But if you can do the trifecta, quality location, quality dwelling, quality amenities surrounding, you know, boom, boom, boom.
But that's the difference between, because when markets run, everybody's into it. And there's a million people operating.
The momentum.
Everyone's a stockbroker just before the GFC. Every cab driver I ever got in, have you been? It wasn't. Back
we used to say that, like, if the cabbie starts giving you property advice, get out.
Get out. Like, leave.
You're in the wrong place. There you go. Yeah. Well, you know, I quite like Perth. I've owned and bought and sold a bunch of properties in Perth. I shouldn't have sold them, but that was a long time ago, 22, 23 years ago. I'm a fan of Perth. Out of the three cities that we like the idea of, you know, where Melbourne and Brisbane are the two main right now, Sydney is a city that's out of reach from a real estate point of view for most investors. So you'd be Western Sydney, you'd be Newcastle, you'd probably be Wollongong or something like that. So, you know, Perth and Adelaide are, you know, third and fourth choices.
Well, you're going to get that kind of volatility that you're not going to get in capital cities, right? Or I guess it is a capital city.
The bigger towns.
WAs, but,
it gets affected by mining a lot, and
in some, that's why I see it as a good thing, because from a stock perspective, I go, well, BHP, Rio, you go to Twiggy, like, these guys have their peaks and troughs. Right? But you don't stop betting on BHP.
No.
When it goes down, you go, great, let's get in.
Buy in.
And let's just keep going as it keeps going down, unless you believe that mining and resources are not going to be valuable commodities in the next 50 years. So for me, you know, because the markets act very quickly to this information, stock market happens quickly. Real estate markets take time to sort of gather that momentum. But to me, I actually see these as good opportunities. I don't know, but I go, well, commodity prices rising, great prospects at the moment for various different types of mining resource sectors, also challenging headwinds. But if you kind of put that as if they start to have a high degree of desire for labour force to move into these places, and I can't tell you exactly what it is. I know that you'll probably guess, but I've got clients right now that flat out buying property that I will advise on. Because there's just no accommodation in and around the businesses that they need to put people into. And they're getting ridiculous rental returns. You're getting but the caveat is that these people own the businesses.
Well, and they would have to pay for people to stay in a hotel, which would be 3 times as much. They might as well buy an asset that they can house their own team in.
If it lasts for 2 years, the cost increase of the business will pay for the property. Now, there's only so long that sort of stuff can last.
Well, you know, Andy, that town was one of the first towns that I actually started. I know the town. I have helped people buy probably nearly every property in that town that's ever been sold.
Mate, you can get into a great fight in that town.
I developed 13 townhouses on a street called Dugan Street.
Somebody
by the way,
that was unlucky.
256 Dugan Street. You can check it out. I'm not going to tell you what the town is, folks. You might be able to find out. And I never visited.
No.
Bought it, developed it, sold it, made $1 million in this town. Interesting, $1 million. There you go. Anyway,
Bob. Hopefully that answered your question.
Bob. Tamworth. Actually, I did. Hey, Bob, I bought a block of
Aaron's question. I beg your pardon.
I bought a block of 15 townhouses in a place called Moree, close to Tamworth. I strata titled them. I renovated them. Again, I just made over $1 million in Moree on a. And do you know what happened, Andy? I kept 4 of them. I tried to rent them out, and the local agents, because I made money, refused to rent my properties for me. This was 16 years ago.
This is what happens in the Wild Wild West,
mate. It was interesting. Anyway, there you go. A few of these little things. Tamworth, not a bad little town actually. I like Tamworth, Bob. Yeah, it's a good town. We did a subdivision in Tamworth. I can't remember the street now. Actually, I remember selling houses in Tamworth for 185 grand. I actually remember back in my day, folks.
God, is this starting to sound like
You're getting me started now. No, I'm not kidding. This is not a lie. This is not bullshit. I bought a property in a place called Moree for $19,000, Andy. 19 grand. Actually, no. This is when I first started out in 2002, right? Wow. And I actually took the money out of my credit card because I had a $20,000 credit card limit. And I took the money out of my credit card and I bought the house.
Wow. What was the interest rate on the credit card?
11%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, 11%. Wow, that's unbelievable. The interest rates, the cash rate was higher.
Yeah.
The interest rate was lower.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Mate, it wasn't that long ago that real estate was insanely cheap. What would it be worth now, Adrian? It'd be interesting, actually. I might go back and actually check a few of these because don't reckon they'd be worth a lot more than, not significantly, but they'd still be worth more than I paid for them, I reckon.
What we need is inflation-adjusted returns.
Well, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would be interesting. Yeah, it's just.
Jason's gone into dreamland.
I'm off of the ferries.
He's gone. He's on the plane and he's doing site visits right now.
But I think I've asked you this before, folks. Maybe we'll use this as the wind-up question for tonight. What was the one thing, Andy, that that changed the real estate market in Australia forever? It was so regionalised, it wasn't funny. And then all of a sudden, it was nationalised. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it. But, folks, chuck that in the chat.
Globalised.
It was globalised, yeah. Chuck it in the chat. What was this one innovation that happened to Australian real estate? And it happened in 2003. The innovation was created.
I know the answer.
And it wasn't positive real estate, by the way. We started in 2003, just so you know.
Well, it's almost 20 years through, isn't it?
It's going to be 20 years soon. John, it wasn't foreign investment. Boom, Alison knows this one. Realestate.com started, folks, in 2003 in Australia. And what that did, Adrian's on it as well, it allowed...
almost made it a legitimate investment.
Well, you know, it increased the speed of information about the real estate market, and you could sit at home and you could research any market you wanted to in Australia, and you could go... If I had 500 grand, would I buy that one or that one? And that one or that one was way more now than your local newspaper. It now became the whole of Australia. So you went from, I live in the Mornington Peninsula, I buy the newspaper, and maybe, just maybe, you might look at the real estate ads in Melbourne, maybe, right? That was the maximum you would look at. Now you could look at the whole of Australia and go, holy shit, my 500 grand gets me that there, I'm buying that.
I know an advisor who is a bit of a mentor of mine. I like to learn from people who are far smarter than me because it stops me from having to learn.
I like that, man.
Make new mistakes. Don't make the same ones. And I love because he was real estate, right? And that's very rare for an advisor, you know, a financial advisor.
It is very rare, yeah. Yeah.
He's great. You know him. We won't mention his name. Had well over $1 billion of funds under management, which is huge.
Big money.
And it only just came to me how genius what he used to do was, because this didn't exist. And he said, one of the things I used to do, and he said, I'd get the paper every weekend, and I knew where all my clients lived. They were all, because it was all geographically located. He had clients within a certain region, and he'd highlight the certain areas, and he'd go, Jace, just so you know, your house went up by about 10% last week. And so he before realestate.com, one of the things that he used to do is he'd sit down with his coffee every weekend, he'd go through the newspaper, he'd slice it out, and he had his client segmented on the database, and he'd go, just as a bit of information, your property went up by X this week. And so he was doing that information for his clients, and his clients felt good about it because they felt like they had some sort of idea. I didn't really click to me just how powerful what he used to do was until I joined the dot with that just then. Is that up until then, people had no idea what their property was worth.
No idea.
Unless they looked in the paper and sort of saw what it went for on the weekend.
Yep.
Which how many people would do? But in my world, that happens every single day. That happens to the second.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. Maybe we'll put a little pin in this and this one. Like, I actually think there is. I'm going to check myself on this one, to be honest. Like the speed of
information doesn't mean quality of information.
No, it doesn't mean quality, right? And I might even put a pin in this to say, I'm going to think about it for a week or two, and we'll come back to it, because
let me give you an anecdote. You're thinking about is because we use investment managers and very specialist people in the market to manage our share portfolios for our clients, right? Because they're looking at it every second of the day. They've got analysts looking at everything. But I still have structural overlay. And so what we call them are satellites. And we'll put 10%. And at the moment, we've got about 30% deployed in what I call my satellites. And my satellites are always in non-daily listed investments. And what I mean by that is they cannot be priced daily.
Yeah.
And the beauty about daily, not being able to be priced daily means that the emotion goes out of the market.
The psychology.
If you can't sell it daily, then what's the point in pricing it daily?
Yeah.
And to be fair, what's the difference in the value of Google yesterday as opposed to the value of Google today? Well, only what the emotion of the market has done based off
opinion, feeling, stuff that's non-tangible.
But on the 10-year trajectory, I can guarantee you it's going to be, where's the thing? It's going to be like that.
Yeah.
Depending on which way that is, I'm not quite sure. But it's going to
be up, folks, up.
And if you get out the noise in between there, and I think that this is where investors, especially in our game, just get so lost.
Totally.
The game isn't a game of day to day. The game isn't a game of month to month. The day to day and the month to month is in the practices that you put money into the market, the practices that you save money, the diligent routines that you go through in business.
Yeah.
The trajectory of the investment game is always the same.
Well, it reminds me of actually one of my first ever wealth mentors, a guy called John Burley, and he said, you've got to have an automatic acquisition plan. Not acquisition, investment plan. I augmented to acquisition. He said, every month you put 10% of what you earn into investment. And he goes, doesn't matter what's going on outside, whether the sun's out, whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, no matter. Every month.
It's like exercise.
Yep. So the compounding effect of that over 20 years compared to every day going, it's up, it's down, it's up. Should I buy? Should I sell? Should I like wasted time, energy? You've got better things to do with your life, and if you're backing understandable, rational assets that you understand and can get, I love real estate because it's so understandable. You love the bigger conversations in and around that, and then you have some edgy stuff on the edges for your investing,
But the same thing's true. Whenever I speak to investment managers, the ones that I stick with are the ones who don't try and tell me about their latest wins.
Yeah.
Because everybody who talks to me about the latest wins is like the fisherman who just caught the biggest fish.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't hear about the 7 weeks that he sat out in the one hole and never got the single thing.
Mate, he ate once in the last 4 months, one big fish, and the other times he hasn't caught anything.
And I guess, my opinion for this side is...
Oh, that'd be a good investment book, The Biggest Fish.
the biggest fish. There'd be some great stories,
wouldn't it?
Wouldn't there?
It's this big,
Oh,
you know. But you know what? One fish a day would keep you very, 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 very well off, you know.
And the most successful people that I've met in life and investing and in business are the people who do those very, very simple things pragmatically, constantly over time. They understand that there's noise. Sometimes you might hold back and you might be a little bit less bullish, but the general theme is that you're constantly in the game. Because the moment you sideline yourself and you think that you can play the game based on entering it when is appropriate, it doesn't happen in sports. They didn't have Michael Jordan. They just go, you know what, we'll put him in those seconds because that's where we're going to go. No, he was on the field the whole time.
The whole time.
And when you look at the greatest sports stars in the world, when you look at the greatest businessmen, the greatest investors in the world, it's consistency of time on the court.
Yeah.
It's not when they went on. I don't know a single field where that has been a successful strategy, not anywhere in life. Because if it was that easy, mate.
Roll me out just once or twice.
Just introduce me to the person and I'll go and live in the Bahamas for the rest of my life and we'll shoot this from over there.
Well, maybe that could be a plan a bit later on, my friend, but
done.
Nice to hang out with you.
Good to see you, mate.
Folks, fantastic to hang out with you guys.
Let us know, should we never do this ever again in person or should we give it a crack a little bit?
Well, you know, I think we got a bit spicy this evening. Anyway, you know, like it's always nice to hear from you guys about what.
We've got the 9 popes, not 8, not 7.
Nine
popes.
I don't know how 9 came about, but anyway.
The story of sorry, can't use that joke now. It's still not appropriate. Needs to be a little bit later on. Oh, and the other ones, they're both over my side, Jason. Don't know how that happened.
Now, I bought this. This is interesting. I'll tell you quickly before we finish up.
Have this for
Elegante Boucher. My wife likes the rosé, so I thought I'll buy her some of that because I was away on a little jaunt with Sammy Sagers down at the Barossa. I think I ended up buying 5 cartons of this, folks. It was a few $1,000s worth of rosé. I don't know how I ended up buying it, but it was at the end of my wine buying tour. It's not too bad, Fenton. What do you reckon? I've got a lot of bottles of it that I've got to drink.
So let's
anyway.
Did anybody? And if you're still on, whack your name in there so we can go back through the chat. Just have a quick look. We better screenshot the debt clock.
Yeah, quick, do the debt clock, Fenton.
The debt clock.
The debt clock.
Where did we end up?
All right.
We'll do.
So there was a couple of people in here for the debt clock. Do you want to go to you, Fenton's iPad?
It was 8 trillion. It is now 8 trillion.
Alison, 859. That was so close, Alison.
859, 8519. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was pretty close. I think Alison was pretty close. Chris was pretty close.
Oh,
9-8. What do you think? There was 3 of them.
We might have to take a bit of a screenshot. Let's go screenshot. I'm going to screenshot this. You screenshot the others.
I'll try and get it.
Mate, it's a control shift delete.
There we go. All right. We might have to announce this next week, folks.
We will, and we'll send you one of the 9 popes.
All right. There we go. Anyway, there you go. Anyway, well, Fenton, think we're done.
We're well over time.
But anyway, thanks for hanging out with us, folks. I think we rabbled on a bit. 2 bottles of wine.
Not finished yet.
And in decent glasses as well.
Yeah, have you heard them chink? It's not like...
No plastic here today. No. Well, folks, thank you very much for hanging out with us, mate. As always, fantastic to hear your wisdom
and yours,
over some glasses of wine.
Appreciate it.
And I think, folks, well, it's a good night from him.
Yeah, it's a good night from me.
Good night.
Good night.
Done. Dusted. End the stream.